Welcome to the Payroll Profits Podcast, the world's top podcast for payroll entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Tyler Winn. Whether you're starting out in the business or looking to take your practice to the next level, join me and other fellow entrepreneurs as we explore strategies for success, share insights, and uncover the secrets to scaling your seven-figure payroll business. Let's dive in. I'm here with Matt Vaadi of guHRoo, and Matt and I go back a few years, and he actually uses the same payroll software that we use, and he's developed his own proprietary software, which is super interesting. I wanted to talk with Matt today because he has grown a payroll company, I think, in kind of a unique way. He's led with HR. You don't see that a lot of times, but obviously HR is a huge need in the small business community, and that's what his software has kind of been built to do. And he's used that, I think, to grow the payroll side of his business as well. So thanks for jumping on the call today, Matt.
You're welcome, Tyler. I honestly don't know how anybody does it any other way at this point. I don't even know how anybody would answer your call, open their door to you if you were just talking to them about payroll. So I'm excited to learn from you how you've got so many people to respond to your calls or emails when you're just talking about payroll.
Well, honestly, kudos to you because, like, for me, HR, that's not something I'm interested in talking about to anybody. And I know a lot of payroll companies have actually partnered with you to help with the HR so they don't have to deal with that. That's the model I would prefer because HR, it's too murky for me. I like the black and white of the payroll world, but I think you've married both pretty well. So maybe to start out, you could just give us some background on yourself. Why did you start a business? And how did you get into the payroll industry? It's always interesting to hear that story because I've never talked to one person who said growing up, I wanted to go into payroll. We all just landed in this world one way or another. So how did you get where you are today?
Well, I'm an entrepreneur from the jump. So I grew up near a river in upstate New York. And I remember my first entrepreneurial endeavor was I would sell worms to the fishermen who would drive down this dirt path by my house to get to the river. And I would sell them. I had a big piece of plywood that I just found outside. I spray painted, I'll never forget it, an orange spray paint, 25 cents, worms. And so the entrepreneurial venture goes way back. But if you get closer to current day, I'm a former ADP guy. So I was working for ADP when I moved here to Columbia, South Carolina. And I reached out to corporate one day after moving here. I'd been here for 6-12 months, whatever it was. We're trying to put roots down, right? My wife and I, we moved here to have kids here. We have family in the area, so we really want to be a part of the community. So I said, hey, can you guys give us a few $100 to sponsor this local nonprofits 5K? We'll get our logo on the back of the t-shirt. We'll all go out and volunteer. Some of us will run. It'll be great. ADP at the time only had a satellite office here, so there were very few people. We weren't very integrated in the community. I wanted to change that. They did not. And so they said, Matt, we just don't get involved at the local level. And I said, okay, that's fine. I completely understand. If you give $500 to every charity for every satellite office in America, shareholder value, blah, 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 blah. Not really the life I was trying to live, right? So that was just another thing that told me, hey, look, the path is still there for entrepreneurship. I'd had several smaller endeavors after college, landscaping company, personal training company. But at this point, it was like, all right, what do I want my personal legacy to be? What kind of impact do I want to make? What do I want to leave behind on this earth when I leave it? And all roads pointed towards, this payroll and HR thing really well. You can do it a little bit differently in a way that's more meaningful and helpful to the small businesses particularly. But then you can also give back. So we're a mission-based company. We give away 5% of our business. We give away 3% of all revenue, 1% of our time, and 1% of our product to nonprofits. And we also encourage our employees, our clients, those around us to give back. And so it's about, we call it payroll with a purpose because it's about more than processing payroll, cutting checks, and paying taxes. That's just what we do, right? Why we do it is completely different.
Yeah. And that's so cool. Hey, thanks for listening in today. If you are enjoying the conversation and want to learn more about how I can help you grow your payroll company, go to payrollprofits.com. There's a green button there right at the top of the homepage. You can book a free growth session with me, and we can talk about how I can help you grow your payroll company to 7 figures and beyond. I mean, where do you think that drive to have a mission came from? Was it from feeling that there wasn't a care for that at ADP? And so you said, I just want to be the polar opposite of that? Or does it go deeper or further into the past of like, I want to make a difference with my business? Where do you think that drive? I'm just kind of curious where that came from.
Yeah, so in the short term, there was the, hey, look, the personal legacy, all that fun stuff. But if you go back, so I grew up poor in upstate New York, single mother. She'd work 3 jobs, waiting tables, tending bar just to put food on the table. So philanthropy was never in my life, right? Like that wasn't, we were just barely scratching by. There was never like, hey, we're going to go give away the money. Like, are you kidding me? We were desperate for money. And so my first real job, quote unquote, we would go and volunteer as a team at the Ronald McDonald House. And I remember sitting down with this family and just having this amazing conversation. And she was talking about how meaningful it was to her to have us there in such a critical time for their family. And that really just opened my eyes to philanthropy as a whole and giving back. And then it just continued to snowball from there. And it became a really important piece of my life. And then to your point, amazing companies. I don't even typically list ADPs or say their name when I talk about that story. I say I work for this big national company because they're a fantastic company and they give back in a million different ways. And I have no gripes or qualms with them. But for me personally, again, if I want to make an impact in my local community, and I never really had that desire before, I lived in Raleigh and I knew that was going to be a bit of a transactional stop after college. I knew it wasn't my lifetime stop, but like, this is my spot. This is where we wanted the roots and I want to make an impact here and beyond here. And we've expanded that over time. Not to get too divergent, but your dollar goes a lot further in other places where they lack clean water than maybe it does in Columbia, South Carolina. So we tend to spread the love around now at this point. But yeah, I think it's just important that we, I think as entrepreneurs, payroll, CPA, whatever you do, you have a debt to your community to kind of pass down the ladder, if you will, and to continue to help others to improve their circumstance as you improve your own.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that as entrepreneurs, there's like this bootstrap mentality, and it's like, hey, I did this, but everybody needs support. And the person who thinks they did it by themselves, I think that's just naive and arrogant, because even your background, where you were born, your parents, like all these environmental factors, obviously we have to have an internal drive to do what we do, but so much of that is influenced by our upbringing and stuff. So that's cool. I know you also do like an annual conference or something in the local area.
Yeah. So a lot of these things are driven by need. You'll notice a path, psychopath might be what some people call it, but there's a path in a lot of thing I do of like, was looking for something, couldn't find it, made it. So for us, Columbia, South Carolina is what I call sort of a secondary city, a secondary market, not a big market. So, I Google after having been here for 12 months or having started my own business, entrepreneurial conference, Columbia, South Carolina. Well, nothing here. All right. Entrepreneurial conference, South Carolina. Oh, nothing in South Carolina. All right. So, all right, well, why don't we just start something, and maybe one day it'll be a user conference. Maybe there'll be 500 guHRoo users there one day and it'll be cool, or, who knows where it'll end up. But the first year it was more of a user-based thing. So it was mostly our customers, and there was only like 25, 30 people there. And it was about HR all day long. And it was just sort of hey, how do you create a better culture? And then over time, the community started to engage. So we used this thing where we had partner hosts. So instead of having sponsors, we'd have other businesses that we trusted who would, a law firm, a consulting firm, a CPA, and they would deliver some content throughout the day. But then, they would also help to bring their folks to the conference. And then, fast forward 3, 4, 5 years later, now the city's involved and the city's sponsoring, the county's involved and the county's sponsoring. And now we're going from an event where the first year we had $1,000 budget and one sponsor for $250, where last year, we had a $75,000 budget and 500 people. And, we give away 100% of ticket sales to nonprofits. And so it's been a thing, again, where we've attached our brand to something that's just great for the community. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about growth. It's about helping people to continue to grow their business themselves and the others around them, but also it has an impact. And so it's very much in line with what we want to do and what we want to be, and it's helping to serve others. And so it's something I'm very proud of and something we continue to try to find ways to grow and make impact.
I mean, the fact that it grew that quickly means there was a desire for that kind of community, and you're definitely filling that. I mean, I have looked at you, Matt, and I've always wondered, like, how do you do everything that you do? Like you're running a company, you develop software, which I mean, I've had fantasies of, building my own payroll software, but I know what that would take time-wise, money-wise, people-wise. Then I always kind of go back to what we use. But, and you've got a conference, you do all this other community involvement work. Like, how do you manage your time, your priorities? Do you have a system? I've always looked at you and wondered how you do all that you do.
Well, the same, Tyler. I wonder that about you. You're a lot more focused than me, which is something that I wish to emulate better. Is that you name all those things and you missed about 10. So there's a lot going on, and faithful servant of Christ and husband and father are at the top of that list, and so there's that too, right? And so to your point, awesome. Like we have to be very stingy with our time. And that's it, is putting great people around you, because you can't be stingy with your time if you don't have people to do some of the things to make all these things work. So that's something that's been like delegation to a fault almost at times, right? Like I did not pay myself for 3 years. I know a lot of people don't have that luxury, but it was just a matter of like any penny we have is going to go to paying people to do the work, so that, the work that I'm not good at, I don't have to try to do. Like I always joke with people, like if you ever hear anywhere near your payroll, like you need to run for the hills, dude. Because like I'm the worst payroll person that's ever, you want to talk about some tax notices. When I was doing payrolls early on, there were some tax notices. And so, I mean, it does come down to, you talk about the process. I mean, I always say every day starts the day before, right? So it's just simply planning out that next day, but then ultimately checking back against, what am I trying to accomplish over the next 30 days? And are the things I'm doing right now in line with that? Over the next 30 days, in line with the things that I want to accomplish over the next year? Are those things over the next year? And then of course that all starts with being able to forecast, looking ahead, and then backing down into that. And so there's a bunch of different ways to do that, but really sort of constant. And I hate my calendar, don't get me wrong. Like I absolutely hate it. Like there's an old Paul Graham essay. He talks about a manager's calendar versus a maker's calendar. Makers, software developers, creatives, they need 3 to 4 hour blocks at a minimum to get anything done, at a minimum. And sometimes that's days. Whereas I'm lucky if I get a 30-minute window open on my calendar where I can try to crowbar something in there and then make a little bit of progress on it, and quickly, have to duplicate that event for the next day because I didn't make any progress, because it's only 30 minutes. You can't get anything done in 30 minutes, right? And so, managers' calendars are more zebra striped, whereas, a maker's calendar is more days blocked at a time. I tried to get to those big blocks, at least a couple days a week, because there are so many projects that require that level of function, or that level of just, it's like with writing. I've heard Tim Ferriss say when he's writing, like the first 8 hours is garbage. And so if you really think about that, like the level of discipline it takes to be able to sit down and get past the 8 hours, right? And so a lot of things we do in business, same way, where it's like sat through it for another couple hours, you probably would have gotten to the gold, but you just only had a couple hours, so you barely scratched the surface, right? So it's a combination of all those things, but more than anything else, it is being willing. If I don't sit down the night before and plan out today, then that means the first thing I'll do today is plan the day and make sure that the things that are important are getting taken care of, and everything else, can find a way to fit in around it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just been a constant iteration of trying to find out what works, and you have to constantly evolve. I don't know if there's one. I've always had a system for managing my time, but I've always had evolving systems depending on what I need. So like right now, I totally agree. You got to plan the day the night before. I think I struggle with that at times, but now I have so much going on that I have to do that to keep my sanity. But the night before, I'll sit down with my journal or my Remarkable tablet, and I've got a checklist of like, okay, review my calendar for the next day. What I've been doing is time boxing my entire day out. I don't always follow it to a T, but I try to block it in 30-minute increments. That's definitely not a maker's calendar. But every 30 minutes it keeps me on track, because I know what I would do is I would get lost. I would like go on LinkedIn and just get lost and feel productive. But then an hour and a half later, it's like, crap, I've got this other stuff I need to do. My team's waiting on. So now it's like, if I restrict my time, like the restriction, I think, is what forces a higher level of productivity. So I'll say I only have 30 minutes here, and then I got to go to the next thing. And it forces you to focus. I've also started using like the Pomodoro method where you do like 25 minutes of work and then stop for 5 and get up and walk around, get some fresh air. And that's really helped as well. So I'm trying some new stuff right now, but the time boxing is the latest thing where I literally plan pretty much from 5 a.m. when I wake up to 5 p.m. when I close up shop and go home, be with the family, is all planned out. Now, like I said, I'm not following that perfectly. Things happen, life happens, but at least you have a framework to start from. And if I miss, I know I got something to make up, or I can just say, you know what, screw it. I just have to do that. Try to get that in my day tomorrow. But I think like the thing I've realized is that I got to stop overcommitting to stuff. Like if I can't fit it in my calendar, I can't say yes to it. Like that's, yeah. Why are you laughing?
I'm just laughing because it's like, you know, the number of board of directors and random stuff I do that I have, it's just trying to, again, like get crowbarred into like where there's no time to even do anything. And then it's like, here's the monthly board call for 3 hours. Like, oh crap. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah. And it's not fair. I mean, honestly, let me be the poster child for people of like, when you overcommit, I mean, you're letting everybody down, right? You're letting yourself down. You're letting the people down that you're trying to serve. Like, there's no awards for how many boards you serve on. And, you know, it's funny. So yesterday we're recording this the day after Memorial Day. So everybody's off yesterday, Memorial Day. So I sit down and get into the email and I'm like, I'm going to plow through this. I got a bunch of email that I got to get out of the inbox. And, you know, I have an executive assistant who goes through my email and only leaves behind the stuff that I need to see or respond to. And so again, looking for more opportunities to delegate or offload some of these things. I started a Google Doc on the other screen. All right, what are these emails that I'm going through? Can anybody else do? Well, I'm very proud to say that the overwhelming majority, there was some reason or another that nobody else could do this thing. And some of it was security of like, all right, well, I don't want anybody else to have access to this particular system in this way. And so like, all right, great. I can't necessarily offload that. I'm kind of the final key holder on that. And so that one makes sense. While I don't like to do it, I'm the only one that can do it. But then there's still things like that where it's like, all right, what safeguards can I put in place to get comfortable with this? And so I continue to find ways. You ask about, you know, how do you find ways to get rid of the time? It's like, what am I doing that somebody else can be doing? And the answer is almost everything, right? Almost everything I do, somebody else can do. And you know, we've got a lot of accountants listening to this who tend to have a very different level of attention to detail than I have. I have a very low level of attention to detail. I'm a just ship, just get it done, get it out the door kind of guy. But like you're a big Dan Martell guy. His big thing is, you know, 80% done by somebody else is 100% freaking awesome. And like, I subscribe to that 100% all day, every day, right? Anybody else doing this thing other than me, if they can do it at least 80% as well, then that's amazing. Why on earth would I be doing that thing and slowing down their growth, slowing down our growth, slowing down anybody else? Like I'm just getting in the way more often than not if I can't get out of the way of my own head on those things.
I've always been a little bit, because I think you're probably more visionary than I am naturally. And I've always kind of been a little, I don't know, envious might be the right word, but it's like I've had to train myself to like stop being a perfectionist, stop feeling like I have to do every detail or know about every detail. And I've had to totally rework my brain and be comfortable working through people. I think that's a big unlock for me in the last year, is that like true leadership is being able to cast a vision and then working through other people and not doing the work yourself, and realizing it's actually selfish for me to get into the details of what I'm paying other people to do, because I'm not giving them an opportunity to grow themselves. Obviously, I need to give them the resources and the direction and the training, and that's on me. But to go in and do their work for them is actually a disservice. So I've got to let go. I got to let people into my life, kind of like you said. Like, there's been a lot of things where it's like, oh, nobody on my team should see that. But then I'm like, is that true, or is that just what I believe? And I've realized, like, no, I just have a belief about that. I just need to let that belief go. And what really is the worst thing that's going to happen if someone sees this piece of information?
Well, it's like we own payroll companies, right? And so at some point, the thing that you're got to let go of is your internal payroll. In order to let go of your internal payroll, well, somebody's going to know what everybody makes, right? And so like,
right, including you.
Yeah, right. Which is the one you always try last to lay on. You're holding on to that one till last. Like, don't worry, I'll process the executive payroll. You just do everybody else. And finally, you just go like, who cares? Like, if they can't get over knowing what everybody else makes, then they're probably not the right fit for the job anyway. And so I have a whole other set of issues to work through rather than like worrying about them knowing what everybody makes. And we've always just kind of assumed, even when nobody internally is doing the payroll, that if you really tried hard enough, you could figure out a way to find out what everybody internally makes. Whether you're looking at, a tax filing, there's easily half the company that could figure out at a payroll company what everybody internally makes if they really wanted to get into it, right? So, yeah, I think letting go is a big thing, but it's also, then there's the other side of that where guys like me tend to struggle more, which is verification. Right. So like, I can't tell you the number of times that I've delegated something, assuming it's getting done, come back, it's getting done for 6 months straight with no issue. Then something happens and you don't know, and they don't, and they just forgot about it. And then you come back in 6 months later and that thing's not getting done anymore. And it's like, oh crap, like what happened there? And so now you've got to unwind that. So it does still go back to the old, like Peter Drucker, inspect what you expect kind of stuff. Like there's a friendly narrative online nowadays that basically implies that anybody who's managing anybody's micromanaging, and everybody has to be led and not managed. And that's a crock of BS, man. Like people need to be managed. Like if you don't manage your people, you are part of the problem, like not part of the answer. And so you will find that those problems will eventually be exposed. You just aren't seeing them right now because you're not doing a good enough job managing.
So that's interesting. So what's the distinction between managing versus micromanaging? Like where does that line get crossed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's being outcome focused helps you to be more of a manager than to micromanage, right? So it's not about necessarily how the sausage gets made. It's making sure the sausage is made, right? Like I think it's funny because I used to do this course on the difference between millennials and boomers. And it was a fun one to teach. I do it at a lot of actually the Accounting Association conferences, which was great because there was always this like immediate rift as soon as you'd start the session between the millennials and the boomers. And I'm a Gen Xer, so I'd like just kind of moderate the whole thing. It was fun. But like one of the things that's really prevalent in millennials is that they're not linear thinkers like I am as a Gen Xer. They don't want the steps 1 through 7 of exactly how to do something. They want to know what the expectation is after step 7, and they might have a different way to get there and give them some autonomy to figure it out. And other times it requires, hey, look, I got to give you step 1 through 7 because if you miss a step, like something's going to go wrong. But oftentimes that's not there. So just making sure that it's getting done past step 7 and not worrying about steps 1 through 7 doesn't mean we want to let people just waste time all day, every day. But you can be outcome focused and driven and still allow people to do their work in the way that they feel is best. And that gives them autonomy and the ability to do their job with a feeling that feels a lot less like micromanagement than management.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think the outcome-based thing is important. I've tried to get better at giving an outcome of like painting the picture of what I want to see and then let them tell me the deadline of when it's going to be done by, because I don't know how much work or how much time sometimes things are going to take. And I used to like just in my head think, well, I want it done by this date. Well, that's just me dictating. And that's really micromanaging at the end of the day. So now I've started like saying, hey, this is what I want done. When can you commit to having this done by? Now they've determined this themselves. It's not coming from me. They've made a commitment, an internal commitment, and then I can follow up on that date and make sure it gets done or let them know, hey, this is when I want you to report it back to me. So I think that's the way I've tried to get away from the micromanaging, but still know that the outcome is going to get done and when it's going to be done by. The last thing you want to do as an owner is sit around wondering, did that get done? Is someone working on it? When am I going to get that by? Just kind of helps solve that problem.
Well, and it's having a good scoreboard and KPIs too, right? So it's like if you expect your average response time to be less than 2 hours to any inbound inquiries, and then you're not checking the numbers weekly, and you're just saying like, oh, well, we just assume this is getting done. You're like, oh, good luck with that. So, I mean, and that's a bit of a debate we have internally. I'll use that one as a good example is like, in our team meeting, do you broadcast just the whole team response time, or do you broadcast individual response times and effectively call people to the carpet, And so there are decisions to be made when you go down that path. I remember when COVID was happening, I talked to a guy out of Florida. He implemented one of these systems where every time they log in, they're basically being monitored. Every keystroke, it's kind of like Upwork, if you've ever used Upwork, and they do the screen recording of the work they're doing. Like, he basically had that internal. And I was like, dang, man, like, that's wow. Like, how do you get anybody to work there? But, I guess it just goes to show you two things. You can over micromanage, and that is 100% micromanaging, but also people will work in a lot crazier environments than you'd expect they would and still do quality work, apparently. So
he's offshoring everything in North Korea. So we're used to it. Why do you lead with HR? Why do you have a passion for HR? And then how does payroll kind of play into that?
Yeah. So in my Pollyanna-ish world here, right, is like the place where we work is such a big portion of our life. So 40 hours a week at work is a third of your life if you're a working adult. And so if you've got a bad job, a bad culture, and just having a bad time at work, we've all had that friend or been that person. It's not just that person that's impacted, right? Like, if your wife is having a bad day at work, she comes home and complains to you. And worse, she might not just complain, right? She might be in a bad mood. She might be angry with you. Now you're angry. Like, the ripple effect can keep going and going and going, right? And we never know how far it goes. But again, we've all been either a part of that in some way, shape, or form, or it's happened to us directly. Whereas the opposite can also be true, right? So if I have a great place to work where I feel fulfilled by my work, and I feel like my company cares about me, and I know the why behind the business, and I understand that my work has value beyond just my paycheck, then I can feel good about it, and I can go home and I can positively influence others as well. And so I just think that small businesses, first, they don't have any budget for HR people, right? Like, this is obvious. So up to 50 employees, SHRM says that 50 employees is when you should have budget for a full-time employee. Some are fortunate enough to have it sooner than that, some later. But in reality, if you've got 50 and 20 employees, you have no budget for a full-time HR person. So there's just no internal knowledge. There's no understanding of how to create a great culture. There's no understanding of proper termination, hiring, et cetera. So we felt like we could really impact organizations there. And that was where they're getting overlooked again by the big nationals. So there's, they're kind of the HR business partners for a lot of these, ASO models at the large national companies are effectively just support people, trying to help people navigate the systems. They're not really doing a lot of real HR work. So we wanted to roll out lightweight, easy to use software combined with dedicated HR support to actually fulfill that promise where we say, hey, look, we want to have an impact on your business, not just getting the HR admin work done. Like, we want to be a strategic partner at the table. Look, we obviously don't hit that 100% of the time. Some people just love us to be transactional. Some people just pay us to be there when they need us, right? Like, hey, look, once every 3 months, I'm going to have an issue, and I know you guys are there, and you'll be doing the rest of the stuff like clockwork every other month. But we just felt like it's a way to have a bigger impact and a way to stand out, right? If I call somebody and I start talking to them about HR-related stuff, it's just an easier, lighter conversation than, payroll, man, payroll.
Yeah. It's so interesting. What are you talking about?
Well, and I'll tell you now, so we've also recently expanded to be a PEO, which I will put on record that nobody should do ever. We raised a little bit of money. You mentioned the software thing, so we're a little bit unique in that. We didn't raise money until 8 years in. We'd bootstrapped everything, and we've since raised from a strategic partner. We were going out and talking to people, and we were saying, hey, look, our normal quote unquote client has changed drastically after COVID. It used to be a 17 employee company headquartered in South Carolina, where 16 of those 17 employees were in South Carolina in one location. Maybe they had one person move away to Missouri and she's still getting paid on payroll, so they're in 2 states. Whereas now that person went fully remote after COVID, and they're in 11 states, and nobody works in an office. And so the complexity from a payroll perspective has changed drastically. But now start talking about the HR regulations. Colorado's got a different sick leave than any other state. You start getting into hiring and firing in every different state, and things get exponentially more complicated on the HR side. Now when you add in PEO, on our side, we have to, so that same account comes to us and they're like, hey, we want to work with you. Oh, cool. You're in 11 states. Well, we're licensed in 4 of them. So now we've got to go look at the other 7 and see if we want to get licensed there before we decide whether or not we want to take on your account, because, we've only been doing the PEO for a little over 2 years now. We started January 2022. So now, we're slowly getting licensed in every state, and every state has its own licensing regulations. And so it is, I would say, all said and done by the time just to set up a PEO, while this expense may be pushed out over a few years. But if you want to be in the majority of states and do it properly and have the right systems, right things in place, you're probably looking at, somewhere between $250 and $500,000 in setup alone over time. And again, it's just kind of incremental. This month we might pay a few grand to get relicensed in this state. This month we might, this state has a much higher licensing fee, and we had to engage an attorney because they had this going on or that going on. And so, it's a different animal. But on the flip side of it, where I was going with that initially was, if we call and say, hey, look, we just saved Low Country Veterans Research $120,000 and they only have 25 employees, and you guys are about the same size, and we see you're a nonprofit too, and we know you're using ADP Total Source, and so are they. And then, man, you want to talk about easier meetings to get. There are a lot easier meetings to get, right? But, getting meetings is not getting business, right?
Right. It's interesting because I actually worked at a startup PEO, so I know the PEO world. Actually, some guys, when I had started Cirrus, I wasn't making enough money to be a full-time gig. I was waiting tables, and they approached me. They took me to Panera for lunch. They were like, hey, we're starting a PEO. How would you like to stop waiting tables? Come help us build this, and we'll let you continue to build Cirrus at work while on the side. So I set up the software, Prism HR, the banking. I did the account. Literally, these guys were total sales guys, no technical chops at all. And so I basically did all that, and I learned a lot. And one of the big things I learned was this is not something I want to do. But then, of course, I see you doing it, and I'm like, it's kind of interesting. But then I'm like, are you using Payroll Relief to do that?
No, we had tried for a while. We could get to, so this was the big revelation that got us into this. Was one of our friends who uses Payroll Relief started a PEO. And so we're like, oh, okay, interesting. How did you do that? And we're getting, long story short, we had to use after the fact to merge all the returns after the fact. But there were a whole bunch of problems with that. The other thing that happened at the same time is we were able to get Blue Cross, which for us in South Carolina, we are one of, I think, 2 PEOs in South Carolina with Blue Cross. None of the nationals have them that come through. Blue Cross dominates our state like they do so many other states. And so it was, oh, cool, you can do all this and you're on Blue Cross. We'll have people literally just make the change, all things being equal, we'll just make the change for the network because we can't do anything with Cigna and Aetna and United in South Carolina. So those two things, one person using Payroll Relief, another person bringing me Blue Cross, were enough to tip the scales. We've been looking at it from the start. I wouldn't say I regret it, but it's definitely not been easy.
It's complex. Are you offering workers' comp too?
We do not have a master policy through the plan yet. So that's one thing you'll quickly find is when you've only got a handful of groups, it's far more expensive for them to get workers' comp through you. And they'll just say, well, we're not going to do this through you because it's far more expensive. And so you've got to hit that critical mass. Yeah. But the interesting thing that's happened over time is it's come to be an advantage. And so we'll have groups come to us. We had a group come to us as an example they developed software for the Navy. And occasionally one of their guys, maybe one person out of 30 every 6 months will be on a Navy ship. Well, TriNet would not write that workers' comp when they found that out. And so they were throwing them off. And we're like, look, you can go get your workers' comp anywhere. We've got a great partner you can use to get the workers' comp, and then we'll do everything else. We could care less about the risk around the workers' comp. And so that actually was a great solution. And we've had several similar use cases where it's been a great solution for them. Now, I will say, in this industry, one of the things people will talk about is, hey, we make a lot of money off workers' comp. The master policy is a big deal. You should have a master policy in place. Well, dude, we serve predominantly white collar stuff. So it's not going to be a big money maker for us ever. And so it's not really, we're going to do what's best for the clients there, even, regardless of what it is. We're at a point now where we could get rates in line, but is it what's best for the client? I don't know. I still think they're usually better off being individually rated than they are in a pool when it comes to workers' comp, especially if you're white collar.
Can I ask what software you're running the PEO side on?
We're using a system called Pro Software. They're a little bit, kind of run a similar playbook to what we've run at guHRoo, where, hey, built the tool to run our own business. And then, we decided to start white labeling it for other PEOs, and to kind of expand on what you said earlier. Yeah, we recently added Payroll into our platform. But so we built onboarding, timekeeping, PTO management, and now Payroll into our own app. But it's not, it would be years before we could put PEO clients on there. So we just decided, hey, we've got to put something other than this cobbled together payroll relief. The problem when we had Payroll Relief was we had to have Payroll Relief, guHRoo, and another Ben admin system. So we had 3 apps running for everybody that was on the PEO at that point. So, it was freaking brutal.
It's a lot.
But, so yeah, that was the biggest driver, was the CS team was about to kill me if we didn't make a change there. They weren't ready to wait for our product roadmap to work out where we could finally handle PEO clients, which was a smart move because, like I said, it could be years as we figure this out more and more of what the nuance is there.
There may be some opportunities with Payroll Relief to revisit it in the next year or two. Just being at the Iris conference last week, they were kind of demoing the software, and they're building it out because they purchased MyPay, so now they have an internal bureau, and they're going to run that bureau on Payroll Relief. They're going to call it Iris Payroll. I think the Payroll Relief name is going away, but it's going to be able to do a lot more stuff because they need. Whatever they were doing at Thomson Reuters when MyPay was under that umbrella, they need to be able to do that. So they've added in, you can download ACH files for direct deposit and tax out of Payroll Relief now, which is interesting. I think that would help with a PEO model. And there's just a lot of other, tracking, just stuff we haven't had for a long time, like tracking workers in different jobs in the same pay period. It's not that complicated, but we've never had it. And I think they've got a new workers' comp partner that they're working with. So I'm actually, I've had my ups and downs with Accountants World over the years, and I don't believe anything till I see it. And even when I see it, I'm like, okay, I'm the beta tester now because you've not tested this on anyone. But I'm actually pretty excited. I think there's some good things coming, and I've met some of the product team, and they seem to have good experience and good intentions. So we'll see.
Well, I'll tell you, I find whatever your favorite GIF is of a guy eating popcorn to watch something, whether that's Jon Stewart, whether that's Jimmy Fallon. I know there's a bunch of popcorn GIF guys, but I am just watching what they're doing with popcorn in hand because they're executing one of the most beautiful roll-ups that we'll see in this space, especially when you think about the confluence of events over the last few years with QuickBooks pulling out of the space, taking Apex, taking MyPay, taking Payroll Relief. The options for an operator who wants to have a 1 to 49 predominantly 1 to 49 employee client base going to be whittled down to almost nothing here over the next couple of years, and they're going to be sitting front and center. And as they start to do a better job marketing outside of the accountant community as well, then they're going to continue to see nothing but growth on growth.
They bought Swipe Clock too.
Right, yeah, and the Swipe Clock thing, which is hilarious to us because we're Swipe Clock's payroll provider. So they have a whole division that's direct to market, that they get nothing but inbound leads of, Joe's Plumbing out of Western Pennsylvania needs a timekeeping system and reaches out to them. And when they say, hey, we need payroll too, well, guHRoo's the payroll partner for that. And, what are we using for that? Payroll Relief. And so I'm interested to see where that goes over the next few months. I get a feeling guHRoo's not going to have anything to do with this equation before long, but which is totally fine because, that's all set to run its course in a multitude of ways. But it has been fascinating to me to watch. And the funny thing is, Tyler, guHRoo, you asked me if before we came on air if ERG was still a thing. guHRoo and ERG used to be 2 separate Fed IDs. guHRoo was a C Corp, built for investment software company, building a white label HR timekeeping payroll product. I could not, for the life of me, figure out a way to properly articulate to investors the market opportunity in the white label space. They just couldn't ever get their brains around it. And so I just kind of moved on. I was like, I'm beating my damn head against a wall here. So I've got to just move on and do my thing. But I still maintain that, again, that 1 to 49, I'm an accountant. I'm a small, dude, if you Google white label payroll right now, we're page 1 for white label payroll, have been for years. The number of inbound I must get 10 inbounds a week for companies that are looking to offer payroll, and they're all looking for some different variation of it. It's hard to put your finger on it. It's hard to come up with exactly what the right thing is for them. And more often than not, they shouldn't be offering payroll. It's a terrible idea. And I've said it's my life's goal to just talk at least like a couple people out of payroll per month, because it's preposterous. They don't do the math, right? Like, I mean, they sit down and they're like, I own this business. It's doing, it's either 300,000 or 3 million in revenue. There's no in between. And it's like they're thinking payroll is either going to be a nice bolt-on or a savior, and it's going to be neither. It's going to be a massive distraction. If anything, I tell them all the time, like, I have full-time sales reps with quotas of $350,000 that spend 50 hours a week banging on doors trying to get people to buy payroll and HR services. Yep. Do you think you can sell $350,000 in a year with no sales reps part-time as part of your job of the leadership team? No, you will not. And even if you did 20% margin, that's your target. So you're talking about 70 grand to the bottom line for all that distraction of bringing in all those new clients. Like, that's your end game, is maybe you hit that level of you get 70 grand in profit. Do you not think if you took the same amount of time and energy and poured it into your core business, you double that? Like, give me a break, man. It's a waste of your time. Yeah. Anyways, I'll get off that platform here. We're on the Payroll Profits podcast.
I mean, that's true. There's a lot of accountants listening, and that's a very relevant message for them, right? That's the pain and suffering I see in accounting firms. Oh, let's just do payroll because our clients are asking us to, and there's no strategy behind it. To me, it's more fear-based of like, if I'm not full service, if I'm not giving my clients everything they ask for, including payroll, they're going to fire me and find a different CPA. Hey, I have developed a free community on Facebook for users of the Payroll Relief software. If you use this software and you want to join a community of fellow users where you can get your questions answered and share knowledge with fellow software users, just go to Facebook and search for Payroll Relief User Group and join the community today. How many accountants have you met that run a great payroll company on the side?
If they do, to your point, it's on the side, and it's a fully branded, separate thing that they have fully committed to. And even then, it's usually not run that well. But but it's a full commitment. And it's not just like we're doing 50 after the tax payrolls or after the fact payrolls because our clients basically railroaded us into it. Like, you can always find a way. It's funny. I did an episode of Payroll this morning talking about the biggest mistakes I've made or seen others make. And it's like, when you think about ancillary services, man, you got to really do math. Like, you can't just be bullied by your clients. You can't let a handful of people that are telling you, if you just had this, we would work with you. Like, having some parameters that stop us from doing certain things is really critical in life. Just some hard no's. And like, the number of things when I look at our P&L on the income statement that are like, oh man, I can't wait for that revenue line to just fall off. Like, we started doing that, 5 years ago. It never really took off. And now we've got a couple clients that are just a distraction and we're just waiting for it to die. Or we could have just partnered with somebody on that. Why did we ever roll that out? Like, I was really bad about, letting the clients dictate the ancillary stuff. And that's one thing I've always admired again about you is like you stuck to payroll pretty much for a really long time and still really are for the most part. And it's like, I often joke, if I'd started over, if you'd asked me the biggest thing I'd do different, we'd be dentistpayroll.com. And that's it. One product to one market. And that's it. And if you could tell me we'd run out of dentists, you're a liar. Like, I mean, there's a dentist on every corner and they all need payroll. And once you get in, you can keep working through, you can work with all the partners, go on and on and on. But yeah, it's that level of focus that kills people, is just thinking about what their clients quote unquote need and have to have. And then they offer it and really realize later on that there's no money there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it just goes back to that whole distraction conversation of like, that's been great for me. I do feel like I'm glad I focused in on that. And my strategy has been, if I'm going to have another service line that I'm going to try to monetize, it's going to be a partnership. It's not going to be my team servicing it. It's going to be, swipe clock on their boss program, and I don't do the work, but I make a little spread. Yeah. I'm not getting rich off of that, but at least my team's not getting distracted by it and trying to getting pulled a thousand different directions. So yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are some things that you're just not going to get away without being able to offer. Like timekeeping is one of them. Like unfortunately, if you have no timekeeping partner integration source, like you're going to have trouble getting business unless you just are like, you can't even find an industry with no hourly employees, man. They got to have a way to track that time. And so you're really, that's about the only one that I'd say, man, if you don't have this, you're screwed. But everything else, you can almost always find a way around it.
Yeah.
Or just say no to clients, believe it or not.
You can.
Right?
You don't have to take every client. Exactly. Right. So we should probably wrap up soon, but tell us a little bit about guHRoo, what the software specifically does. I think you have a timekeeping component built in there, right? Along with the HR functionality. So maybe tell us about that. And then you've got a podcast as well.
Yeah, definitely check out the Payroll and podcast. The podcast was born from a pretty similar place. I remember in the middle of COVID, I was having a conversation with a fellow bureau out of Houston, Texas. This guy, I mean, they're much, much larger than us. He and I were having just an hour-long phone call about how are we going to sell? How are we going to do this? What are we going to do? And I was just like, man, we should have recorded that. Like so many people would have gotten a benefit out of that. That inspired me to have more conversations like that, to do what we can to provide more service to the industry. I'm also on the board of the IPPA, Independent Payroll Providers Association. I think this is a critical resource that's not talked about enough among the accounting community. The IPPA was at the IRIS conference and something I was pushing for and saying, hey, look, we've got a ton of accountants that are doing a sizable payroll business, but don't have the infrastructure and access to peers outside of the accounting industry where they can talk to people who are growing payroll and HCM companies, human capital management companies. And I just think peer networking, mentoring is so critical. The conference in Vegas is something that you just absolutely cannot beat. I mean, it's a room full of hundreds of people in our industry that are all just there to learn about, oh, you're thinking about offering HR services? Great. Here's how I did it. Oh, what are you looking for? Profit margin there? How do you hire? How do you build out a sales team? All the things. So definitely want to make sure people are aware of IPPA. guHRoo is simple, man. So when we started guHRoo, we were coming off of a platform called Evolution, and we were like, all right, we want to go back to payroll relief for payroll. But like, what are all the features that our clients were actually using inside this other system? So not all the stuff we had applicant tracking, we had Ben admin, we had every HR, button that you could imagine, but we put those across the top of a spreadsheet, every feature. And then we put our clients down the rows on the side. And we said, what are they actually using? And there's only two things they were really using beyond payroll, and that's onboarding and timekeeping. Right. And so it was like, all right, we'll build onboarding and timekeeping then, right? Which one are they using more? Well, they're using onboarding more. So we'll build onboarding first, then we'll build timekeeping, and cool. And so now it's grown into, like I said, a very lightweight onboarding and timekeeping app, an HR application for small businesses, really just made to help them get everything off the paper, get everything automated, automate the workflows. And we do partner, as you mentioned, with several payroll relief bureaus that are using payroll relief. We have an integration with them, and you might start connecting the dots if you're a payroll relief user. That's our logo at the bottom of the screen when you log in. So you can find more about us there. But yeah, I mean, it's just really something where we knew others had the same problem as us. So we started offering it to other accountants and payroll providers. I'll just be blunt, man. Most of y'all shouldn't do it. More often than not, people fail when they roll it out because they underestimate how hard it is to sell anything. And they overestimate how many of their clients are going to just adopt just because they send one email out, right? Like if you send one email to your client base saying, now we have HR and timekeeping, maybe you'll get one client. If you don't have any sales chops, any sales background, any desire to sell, then selling your clients on a new product or service isn't going to happen. And then you're going to come back to me and go, oh, nobody's using it. And I go, well, that's because you didn't put anybody on it. And yeah, I mean, we're very different than Swipe Clock's a good example, brought them up. They're the opposite of what we want to be in one way, and that they want to provide every possible use case in every county in America. We do not, right? We want to build for the 80% and that's it. And like the other 20%, sorry, you're not a fit, right? Sometimes it's easy to just say no. And so we say no a lot, but we say yes a lot too. And so it's been exciting. I don't suggest starting a PEO, and I don't suggest building software in the payroll and HR space. Two things I highly would, say if I were starting over, maybe I'd have just been an iSolved licensee from the start and just avoided all this. But, here we are.
We wouldn't be having this conversation though. So,
That's right.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd still have a full head of hair too, though.
Yeah, right. Awesome. Well, this has been fun. I mean, there's more that I wanted to talk to you about, but we kind of run up against the clock. I mean, talking about M&A stuff and acquiring other payroll companies, maybe we can actually, why don't you just have me on your podcast? We can talk about that.
Let's do it.
Just invite myself. Yeah. So if people want to find you, guHRoo, guHRoo.
.co. Yeah. If you search out guHRoo, guHRoo, or Matt Vaadi, we're not hard to find.
Okay. And then Payrolling with a
rolling. Yeah, that was, like I'm going to still have somebody record the Limp Bizkit opening to that, like for my 90s people out there. But
I know a guy. Yeah. If you need. Awesome. And anywhere else people can find you or where you would like them to find you?
You can just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for the conversation, Matt. It's been fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it, brother.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for listening today. This was a blast recording this, and I hope you got a lot of value out of it. If you did, it would mean so much to me if you would subscribe and write a review. If you want to stay in touch with me, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can follow me, connect with me. Just search Tyler Winn, Payroll CPA. I'll pop right up. Send me a message, and I will get back to you. Until next time, this has been Tyler Winn with the Payroll Profits Podcast.